All right, welcome, welcome. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Grace Men's. As you may be able to notice, I am the new and improved Scott Lessing.
Oh.
Thank you, thank you. Another thing that he would love for me to tell you is he and I went out and we went to golf, and I told him if this happened, I would tell everyone, and I outdrove him on one of the holes. Yes, yeah. And I was super excited because I am a terrible golfer. And so it is my it was the highlight of my day, and I've held on to that probably. I will hold on to it for the rest of my life. So it was a fantastic time. But we are here. A couple of preliminary announcements. One thing that's important to note is we will continue the live stream, but the discussions will not be live. They will occur in the room. So if you want to take advantage of those, if you are live, you would want to try to make your way here. And we have a great crowd here today. And so I'm very excited and thank everyone for coming out. So it's probably important at this time for us to know who's here. I am Jason Carter. I will not be hosting today. We actually have a fantastic host today, Neil. You guys all know Neil from, I always want to call it North Royalton, but I think it's North Olmsted. Olmsted Falls. I don't even get it right when I think I'm getting it right. The Olmsted Falls campus. He is the head pastor, senior pastor, lead pastor. What do they call
Campus
it?
pastor.
Campus pastor there. I don't know anything apparently this morning at that campus. And then of course everyone knows we all feel more secure. We all feel better. We all feel safer when Chris is here.
Good morning, fellas.
Good morning. So let's check in. How have your weeks been going, or do you want to check in? I don't know is this part of the introduction. Okay, let's check in. How have your weeks been going?
Good. I got my smoker fixed Sunday, so I practiced Monday on a ribeye. Didn't turn out very well. Today I'm practicing on spare ribs because this weekend for the 4th I intend to cook a whole lot of stuff on my smoker. So my wife got me some spare ribs to practice on today.
Nice.
It's pretty cool. And Sunday was my birthday. So I fixed my smoker on my birthday. Thank you. I'm 27.
27 times 3. Yeah.
Consequently, I just changed my plans for the weekend. I'll be at Chris's
You're
house.
right. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. No, a good week so far. Yeah, nothing too exciting, but really busy. Yeah, with Botter and everything else going on. It's been a busy week. So.
Indeed. For me, I was out last week. I missed all of you. I was in Texas visiting my family, as you may have heard. Had a fantastic time. So did that, and so we're back. A couple announcements as well. I was told to make sure that we remind the guys several times that breakfast starts at 6:15 next week. And next week is the launch of my first day of feeling like I don't want to do this anymore. Because we will be starting at 6:30.
If you notice, Jason walked in right at 7:59 or 6:59.
6:59, yeah.
Yeah, so apparently there was some vote that occurred that I wasn't a part of where we will be doing this at 6:30. So next week, breakfast 6:15, start is at 6:30.
And John,
we have a special announcement from the audience. John?
Thank you, sir. Good morning, guys. Some of you probably know that we partner with several different organizations throughout the city, and one of them is Building Hope. And we received a request for some help for next week at the Hope Center, which is on July 7th, which is Wednesday. What they're looking for is a few guys, if possible, to help disassemble a pipe organ and take it to the dumpster in the back. It'd be about 6 o'clock to 8 is the estimated time for this, and it's asking for a few power tools, a cordless drill, a sawzall, and a reciprocating saw. Now, I'm not a tool guy, so if anybody could tell me what a sawzall and a reciprocating sawzall, well, definitely not a tool guy. So anyway, if you're able to help, please see me. I can get you some more information. There'll be some other representatives from Royal Redeemer and Bay Press who had an opportunity to fellowship with some other guys. So again, if you're able to help out, please see me afterwards. Thank you.
thanks, John.
Okay. I can do more relational stuff if.
Yeah, apparently I muted myself. So, well, good morning, guys. All right, so we're going to dive in. On Sunday, Pastor Jelani took us through the book of Amos. Amos is, it was one of those books that, honestly, I don't know if you felt the same way, but it really hit me hard. One of those books was really convicting. Just as a reminder, he was speaking to lots of nations. He basically drew this big bullseye around Israel, though, the nation of Israel. And he's talking to them, and King Jeroboam was the king at the time, and he'd been really successful, had won back a lot of the land that had been lost, and was actually very wealthy. The nations were at a time of peace, and so this was a time when there was a lot of calm. There was a lot of wealth. There was a lot of comfort, which led to apathy. And so just an interesting thing when you start looking at the correlations between where they were and where we are now. And so we'll get into that a little bit more. But Amos, he gets sent by God to go and tell the nation of Israel that of God's great displeasure with their apathy, with the injustices that they were allowing to see. And so he actually lists out several of these injustices throughout Amos. And so in 2 and 6, chapter 2, verse 6, he's talking about human slavery that happened because of poverty. And then he goes further into chapter 2, ignoring poor people. And then he continues on with the legacy of sexual immorality. Further into chapter 2, and then again in chapter 8, earning wealth off of the backs of poor people. And then injustice in the justice system, unfair wages, high taxation, price gouging. And then finally, denied legal representation. So he goes to them, and these are the things that he is bringing to their attention and saying, listen, this is what's happening in the nation of Israel right now. God is not happy with it. Got me thinking about, I think I've talked before about a missions trip that I went on, and I won't apologize for bringing it up again because it was one of the most impactful things I've ever had in my life. And so I just want to talk to you about this mission trip that I was on. Several years ago, 2018, I was to go on a mission trip to Spain. And when you think mission trip, I'd been on a mission trip before, and when the last one I went on, we went to Mexico and went to a really impoverished area, built a church. It was one of those areas where you were roughing it, and life was difficult. And so that's the kind of the train of thought that I had when I was like, okay, we're going to a missions trip to Spain. Well, we landed in Malaga. Malaga was where we were going to be. If you've ever been to Malaga, Spain, let me give you a quick synopsis of what Malaga is like. Malaga is the fourth strongest city economy in the country of Spain. It's the tech hub of Spain. It's an important hub, a port, access point for things coming into Europe, all of Europe, that goes through Malaga. It has 300 days of sunshine. It has some of the most beautiful beaches in the world. It's a travel destination for cruise ships. So they've got a beautiful port where cruise ships come in. They drop you right off at the boardwalk, and they've got all these amazing restaurants and shops. And when you think of shops, I mean, these are places I can't even afford to walk through the doors of. These are the high-end Beverly Hills kind of shops that are in Malaga. It's a foodie place. When I went to Mexico, you ate like whatever you could find on the street corner, and you wondered if you were going to make it the next day. Malaga, we were eating at 4-star restaurants. This was a missions trip. And we kept, the first 2 days, we got there, and they just kind of immersed us in the culture. So that's what we did. We went to the beach. We hung out with some pastors that were kind of doing other work. We prayed with them. It was wonderful. And we kept thinking, we're on a missions trip? Then they said, okay, now we're going to get into what Malaga's actually about. Then they took us downtown, which is a beautiful downtown, by the way. They have the largest bank in the country of Spain is based out of Malaga. And it's the tech hub, so they just have a beautiful downtown area. So we went down there and went to a storefront that they had rented, and we started preparing bags for prostitutes, which sounds really weird. But the underbelly of Malaga is that they have a serious human trafficking problem. In fact, it's one of the hubs throughout all of Europe. Most of the human trafficked people come through the port of Malaga. And so it was really sobering to see how many women are trafficked through that area. And I wish I could remember the statistics, but it's staggering. And what's even more saddening is the women, they are literally slaves. You think that these are just women that have decided to be prostitutes. That is not the case. Most of them have been convinced that they're going to get a modeling job, brought in from Eastern Europe or brought in from Africa. And they get addicted to drugs, like purposely they stick them in a room for months, addict them to drugs, beat them to the point where they are subservient. And so when you greet these women and you talk to them, they're shadows of human beings. That day, we went back to our really nice condo on the beach in the most sober minds I can recall in a long time. I was exhausted mentally. The next day, we took a drive to the east. Now, to the east, there's this thing that they call the Sea of Plastic. You can actually see the Sea of Plastic from space. And the reason is because it's greenhouses. It's one greenhouse after another. You can literally drive for 2 hours on a freeway at 80 miles an hour for 2 hours and never come out of the Sea of Plastic. It's incredible. They produce 50% of all produce for all of Europe. Think of that. 50% of all produce for the entire, all of Europe. That is an impressive thing. In fact, it was pretty amazing to see this great feat. They have an amazing port, and they have all of this stuff. Again, the underbelly is the thing that we went to. There are people there that are quite literally slaves. And these people, they get told a story that there's a better life in Europe. And if you work for us for 2 years and you pay off this debt, then you're free. You can, run through Europe. You can have a better life. They bring them in, and then immediately what they're told is not the same. They go from, hey, we're going to make a great life, to $3 a week. There's no way you're paying back this debt that is owed and $3 a week. You can barely survive. And in the sea of plastic, we went, I'll tell you this story because it was really sobering. We drove into the sea of plastic, and it's just this maze of greenhouses, tiny little streets woven between all these greenhouses. And we come to an opening, and it's out in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing there. This is, if you want to know what the place looks like, do you guys remember watching The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly? Okay. It was a desert, right? That was filmed in the same place that these greenhouses are now built. So none of this was there when they filmed that movie, but that's where it was filmed. And so the openings are just these barren spots. So we pull into this barren spot, we all get out of the car, and we were just told, hey, just walk the area and just pray and see what God has to say. And so we were walking in this, one of the women that were with us, she started weeping. And so we walked over, and there was shotgun shells on the ground. Well, there's no animals out there at all. There's nothing out there. And so there's no reason to be shooting anything. And so you knew that this was a place where people probably died. And so it was really sobering. And I know we're heading into a really dark place, and I'm doing that on purpose. And I want to take you somewhere that is and should be very sobering. Because there's a lot of things, when I look at that, my experience there, you think, well, that's Malaga. That's Spain. That's somewhere else. That doesn't happen here. Sadly, that is completely untrue. Let me share with you a few things about the United States. This is what's happening right here in our country. These are facts. Human slavery in the United States, in some form or another, there are 403,000 people caught up in slavery in some form or another in the United States. There were 2 farms that were, all of the owners and the managers were arrested because they had workers chained to trees. This was 2019. When you talk about, if I'm just going to go down the list of what injustices God was convicting the people of the nation of Israel about, ignoring poor people. You guys, we live in Cleveland. Cleveland is the poorest city in the nation. I was looking at Olmsted Falls. I live and work in Olmsted Falls. It's a beautiful community. I love living in Olmsted Falls. There's some pretty well-to-do people there. I just love living there. Great school system. I was confronted with something about a month ago. A friend of mine, she works in the school system and came and told me a story about a student that came to school and they had holes in their shoe. And he had to come to the office for something, and the student had holes in his shoe, which my kids, we let our kids run them things ragged, right? And then we buy them shoes. Well, this kid, she was looking at his shoes, and it wasn't because his shoes were worn out. It was because his toes were poking through the front of them. And she remarked about that, and it broke her heart. And so she ran to the store and bought a pair of shoes for this kid. And she gave them to him, called him back down to the office, gave them to him, and he broke down crying. This is a 9-year-old kid, and he was crying because he'd never had a new pair of shoes. Ever. 9 years. Then she went on to tell me that in our school district, we have a huge amount of people. I believe the number is 20% of our students don't have proper food at home. 20% of our students in Olmsted Falls, Ohio, the city that Grace Church is planted in, 20% of them don't have proper food at home. 300 families in our community in Olmsted Falls live below the poverty line. This is a city that I can drive from one end to the other in 3 minutes. This is not a big city. Middleburg Heights, let's bring it a little bit closer to here. There's 600 families in this city that live below the poverty line. Did you know that? Legacy of sexual immorality.
Can I tag in real quick?
Yeah.
So I want to circle back a little bit to the slavery and slavery in the United States. I want to talk about our Constitution a little bit.
Yeah.
So we just celebrated Juneteenth. So many of you may or may not know what it is, but I grew up celebrating Juneteenth. I'm from Texas. And so it's the celebration of when the last enslaved people in Texas found out that they were free, 2.5 years after the passage of the Emancipation Proclamation, the 13th Amendment. I say that to say most of us don't know the text of the 13th Amendment, which is, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States. So we've outlawed slavery except upon conviction of a crime. So we've then legalized slavery in the United States for those who are convicted of a crime. We currently have over 2 million people in the United States incarcerated, the vast majority of which are incarcerated for nonviolent crimes. We have more incarcerated people in the United States than any other industrialized nation. So when we talk about slavery, and we talk about the 400,000 number, to me that's just a small piece of a much larger pie that we should think about when we think about what constitutes justice in America. An important point that Jelani brought out is that justice in America can be bought, right? Our system can be manipulated based on how much money you have to apply to your situation. We may find that to be a very glib approach, but I can tell you from working within the system, on both sides of the system, that it's absolutely true. That the amount of money you have can absolutely change your fate when you interact with our system of justice. And so what does that mean for us as Christians? What does that mean for us as people? And I think that one of the major points that Jelani was attempting to bring out and brought out very well, let me say, is that we've become numb. Mm-hmm. We've began to accept that if it's happening in our society because we love America and because we love our society, that it must inherently be good. And we have stopped challenging our systems with our beliefs and with our faith. And I think we have to begin to ask ourselves the questions, especially when we are engaging when we're engaging politics. I hate to throw that word out. It's such a tough word, but when we're engaging politics, I think we have to ask ourselves these questions. When we're engaging people, I think the question also becomes when we see someone who has a criminal record, who may have a felony record, when we hear that word, we automatically think of them as a murderer or that they're this vile person. People can we've all made felony level mistakes, many of us, in our lives. We just haven't been caught for it. And because someone else was caught, does it eliminate their humanity? Do we no longer see them as a person worthy of our love and our respect and our attention and our helps because they've now been labeled a criminal? So I just think that what one of the things that Jelani brought out that I thought he did a really good job of is that we get to a point of apathy. And I think when he was talking about the people during the time of Amos, that's what happened to them. I think that, and it happens to all of us, justice is hard because justice costs something, right? To ignore justice can be really easy. And when we think about the people of Israel and the people of Judah during that time, they began to worship idols. Why? Because worshiping the idol made them happy. It brought them pleasure. And so they began to attribute pleasure to righteousness. And they thought that it must be good because it brings me pleasure, it makes me happy, so I'll continue. The thing that justice would cost me something. I'd have to deny what was socially acceptable. I'd have to deny what everyone else was doing. I'd have to not go to the sex parties or the parties where everybody was coming back telling all the great stories about all the great times they had. I'd have to deny that in order to seek something that satisfied God. And I think for us, I end by saying, I think for us, that is our challenge, is where has the sword become dull to the issues that hurt the heart of God?
I should have said this as well. When I said 403,000 people, keep in mind that's known. Those are known slave situations. When we were in Spain, they gave us a number and they said, the reality is that it's 10 times worse than that. 10 times worse. And so if that's true for us, that number is staggering. It should blow your mind, and I hope it does. Let's talk a little bit about a legacy of sexual immorality. Now, we could take a lot of different pathways on this, but let's just talk about, this is a room filled with guys, so let's talk about pornography, right? 40 million people annually visit a porn site. 35% of all downloaded content on the internet is pornography. Think about that.
Pastor, give me that one more time.
35% of all downloaded material from the internet is pornography. 68% of church-going men view pornography regularly. 68%. Now, if you're not talking about apathy, guys, that just hit us right here at home. 68%. Wealth from the debt of the poor.
Sorry, I want to
Jump
tag
on
in
that.
again. Forgive me. And I think we often think of it as a victimless crime, as
Yeah.
if the people that are on the other side are there because they chose to be there. But I think what's staggering, what just hit me, was you talked about the individuals who basically are like sex zombies. And what a conviction to know that you're looking at someone who may be in a situation of servitude.
Yeah. And so you're participating in
You're
that.
participating in that.
Unwillingly,
and you're
maybe.
keeping it going.
Yeah. That's the one thing that I remember hearing that. I've never been shy about the fact that I had a problem with pornography. And one of the things that really hit me between the eyes was that. You think that it's victimless. And then you realize that the vast number of people that are caught up in the porn industry are people that are either being trafficked or they have been abused significantly, and that's just who they are now. Or that's how they believe they are. By participating in that, by my apathy towards it, I'm encouraging more of it. And so that's just something that, man, if that doesn't hit you between the eyes.
Sorry, you just got me again. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Chris. Sorry.
Neil, I hope we're not throwing you off.
No,
Guys,
we're
a
good.
quick plug for 7 Pillars of Freedom. This Grace Church hosts a men's class for freedom from pornography. It's called 7 Pillars. They meet every Thursday night. If you want more information about it, ask me. Quick plug.
That was so good, I forgot what I was going to say. So that's good. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about wealth from the debt of the poor. You don't have to go very far in low-income areas to find a payday loans place. And I thought I'd do a little research on that. You know, what is so horrible about a payday loan? You know, you're just kind of giving them, they're giving them a loan, and they're just small loans. They're not, anything significant. And so I started looking through there, and I found this thing. This is from a document at a payday loan place, and it's training material for the person, okay? So listen to this. Annual percentage rate on the customer disclosure form. Do not enter a percent sign in this box. Simply enter a number. For example, enter the number 805. Okay, remember that number, 805, in box 1. Should you enter 805%, your client may become uncomfortable. Remember your response to clients' questions regarding the fees. We charge $15 per $100. Okay, so that sounds like 15%, right? This is an 8-day loan. So a month, that is 805% on the loan. How many of you would sign up for a loan with 805% interest rate? You'd have to be insane to think that's a good idea. Okay, so most of these loans, they said 50% of the loans actually default. And the problem is it goes back to this, some of them, how they do that is they say, well, you just write us a post-dated check, and we'll hold the check. Okay, what happens if your post-dated check defaults? It's a felony. If you wrote a check that you knowingly know is bad, that's a felony. So they know they have this thing, and they've got you. And so what happens is they just perpetuate, okay, we're getting to the end of that loan, so I've got to get another loan, and I've got to sign another loan, and you're caught in this cycle of loans that you will never, ever get out of.
I think it's so easy for us to think they should know better.
Yeah.
Right? I think it's so easy. I raise a couple points. My first point is that the vast majority of people who are in these situations, the payday loan person is the most sophisticated financial person they've ever had contact with in their lives.
Yeah.
Right? They've not come from a community where banking is very important, where their schools are teaching them anything about finances, where their parents have vast experience in that area. So when they get into a point of desperation, the most sophisticated person that they've ever met is this friendly person on the opposite side of a desk who's saying, I can help you through your situation.
Yeah.
And they're desperate, right? They're trying to pay rent. They're trying to keep their lights on. They're trying to feed their kids. And we say, you should know better, right? And I think that we have this sense of a hypocrisy because I think probably each and every one of us benefit and have benefited from our church explaining finances to us. And we've benefited from Jonathan standing up there and breaking down to us what it means to properly approach our finances, or a Freedom Financial class, or Dave Ramsey, or something, right?
Yeah.
Susan Orman. We've benefited from that, and then we take it as some knowledge that we somehow were sophisticated enough to acquire, and not as something that because of our privilege we were able to be exposed to. And so to the point of trafficking, to the point of finances, and I know you're going to cover a lot more points. My question is, how do we position the church in a place where when people are at their most desperate, that's the hand they reach for? And they're not reaching for someone who's going to sex traffic them or someone who's going to take advantage of them financially. How do we position ourselves to know that injustice is occurring and attack or address the issues of justice?
That's a terrific question, because that's what each of us, I hope, are here to do. It's to grow in wisdom and knowledge of the Scripture and to be involved in our communities. And I think the only way to get there is for people to know, hey, Jason goes to that church down the street. I should talk to him. I'm comfortable with him. I've spoken with him. Neil's a pastor at that church. I bet you he might have a good answer for me. But they won't know that unless we're out there engaging our community. Right? Okay.
Two more things I want to cover. Unfair wages. This one was, what's that? Yeah, so we think, we're in the United States. I love the United States. I truly love living here. I think it's a great privilege to live here. And We have laws in place, right, that are supposed to protect people against unfair wages. Sometimes the laws don't actually do what they were intended to do. And I'll give you an example. Say you're a migrant worker, a legal migrant worker. You have come through the proper doorways and you have acquired an H-2A visa, which allows you the opportunity to come in and work for an agricultural company, to be a worker there, a migrant worker. That looks great, and honestly, as an American, without any education and without looking at it, man, I'm so proud that as an American, we provide this gateway for these people to come in properly and find a great way of life, to start a new way of life. Here's where it gets a little bit ugly. There's so many loopholes in that the people that, say somebody comes in on that visa, they have to be, I forget what they call it, they have to be sponsored, okay? So they're sponsored by this corporation. Well, the sponsor actually has the ability through the visa to charge a reasonable fee for housing and food. And there's also, the loopholes of, you have to pay back certain fees and things like that. Remember the slaves that I told you about in Malaga? It is the exact same thing, only we have government sponsored it. We've made it to the point where these people come in, promised a new life, and they're said, hey, specific numbers. You're told you're going to make $1,600 a month, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but for a migrant worker, that's probably a pretty decent amount of money. So they come in, but then all the fees start popping up. The sponsor can now charge them for housing and for food, and that makes sense. But pretty soon, your $1,600 a month is not enough to live on. And so you're having to go to a payday loans, and you're having to do all of these different things. It is unfair. And so deny legal representation. There are, I was dumbfounded by the number that Jelani said on Sunday about pretrial detention. People that are stuck in jail for years without any representation. This is America. Now, why am I telling you all these numbers? Why am I taking this thing so dark and so deep on a Wednesday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning? You're just like, Pastor, come on, seriously. William Wilberforce once said this: you may choose to look the other way, but you will never again say that you didn't know. It's one thing to be unaware. It is entirely different to be completely aware, but completely apathetic. It's totally different. So, question for you guys. When we're looking at that list, or maybe you've seen a different injustice, how have you personally seen that or been affected by that?
So good. You want to go first? I've been talking a lot, but I'm so excited to answer this question. Okay, I will jump in while my good friend Chris ponders. I would say, to your point of being informed, we are capitalists. And no one would suggest that capitalism somehow is this inherent great evil. But one thing that capitalism creates are economies of scale, such that there are people at the top who are very wealthy, and then in order for capitalism to work, we have to have people at the bottom, right? If everybody is making the same, we're that dreaded word, right? We're communists or we're socialists. And so because we're capitalists, we acknowledge the fact that there will be people at the bottom end of the economy. And so because of that, we have what are called the working poor. And so we have people who are working a job 40 plus hours a week, but because of that job and because of what that job pays, they're still poor. They're still working at or below the poverty line. So when we talk about injustice, one place where I've seen it is that you have individuals who can't afford to interact with the justice system because of the cost to their lives. If you have someone who's the working poor and the standard rate for them, if they get a ticket or if they get accused of something, they get in an argument with someone. Actually, I just had a call from someone who told me that one of his working colleagues came to work and told everybody at work that he had a gun. And it caused police to come to the job. They searched everything he had, including his car, no gun. Now, so false accusations happen, false accusations have consequences. So you have someone who's accused of something, and they now have to interact with the justice system in order to establish their innocence. Well, they have to get out. They've now been arrested. So now they need $500 to post a bond because our system requires that to ensure that they will return to court. But they're poor. So where do they get the $500 from? Everyone they know is poor. So now what do they have to do? Jelani covered this. They have to enter into a plea negotiation immediately in order to be released from prison so they can continue to work their job and continue to feed their family and continue to take care of the things they have to take care of, even though they were falsely accused in many cases, or if they were properly accused, even though they had an opportunity to get a lower offense. And that's the interaction of wealth in the system. If you have the money, you can play the game with the system. You can provide yourself with opportunities to get a reduction in your charge or get your case dismissed on a technicality or establish your innocence. But without that money, our system, and so we acknowledge that there are people in the system who don't have the resources to navigate the system properly based on the way the system is designed. So I think that's something that we want to think about. I think to your point about, I assisted an attorney who was working in the area of it bringing in migrant workers. And I think what's interesting about that process is that federal law requires them to repeatedly advertise to Americans the availability of these jobs. They must do it consistently. They must do it persistently in order to establish that there's no American that wants the job. In order for these individuals to have the access to come here and work. So we're talking about jobs that no available American would be willing to work, and these individuals are coming over and working these jobs. My last point, and then I'm done, is we have such this sense of kind of immigration, and there's constant conversations happening about immigration. I just want to make a now you know point, which is statistically, more people overstay their visas than illegally cross the border. I just want to say that again. Statistically, more people overstay their visas than illegally cross the border.
Chris, I don't know if were you ready to jump in? I feel like it's important to say this. There's a lot of times when these conversations, and I'm one of the ones that are guilty of the initial knee-jerk reaction. The knee-jerk reaction is, as you're listening to us up here throw out some very real statistics, is to think that I don't love this country. I don't love capitalism. Guys, I was a business owner. I love the idea that you can come to the United States, work your tail off, and become something else. I firmly believe in that. I love that about this country. So I just want to throw that out there so you understand that is where I'm from. But there's also an awesome responsibility. An awesome responsibility of being, let's face it, yeah, I love this country, but I'm a citizen of heaven. If I'm a citizen of heaven first, I have certain responsibilities, and that can't be bypassed. Sorry, Chris.
No, that's good. That takes me right to my point. I don't know if everybody knows, but I work downtown Cleveland. My office is down there. For 3 years, I rode the buses back and forth from Strongsville. My bus stop was at the Greyhound station. So 4 days out of 5 each week, there would be somebody at the bus station pandering, asking me for money, offering drugs, just some real bad stuff. And so I very quickly learned that there was 5 or 6 of these individuals that would come back each week saying that they needed bus fare to get to St. Louis or somewhere. Same person, different month even. Hey, I just got off the bus. I ran out of bus money. So I think I was maybe tainted there. I had been convicted that I wasn't giving to the homeless, that I wasn't helping out down there. And I've never been to Hope in the City yet, and I haven't done some of those other things. But that bus stop was really challenging for me because now I'm stuck in a position of not trusting the truth out of anybody down there. You know, when someone asks you for cash, you want to help them out, but then I'm like, yeah, you know, do you really have a nice house and a car parked around the corner? Anyway, so I mean, that's a challenging spot that I find myself in. I did want to say, though, too, that for years and years and years, the Department of Defense has had a training requirement that every member go through combating trafficking. The class is combating trafficking in persons. So the information and statistics about human trafficking for these women is true. And there's also men that are trafficked for exactly the same way. So it is a real thing. Semi-annually, I think we got to attend training for that.
So if I may, just two things I want to jump in. I've been talking a lot today. Please forgive. Sorry. I know I said that, but you guys are hitting on such great points. So to the love of America thing, I think it's important to touch that. I want to say very clearly and unequivocally, there's no other place in the world I'd rather live. And there's no other time in history as an African American that I'd rather live, right? Greatest time in the history of the United States to be an African American in America today. But because I love America, that means I have a right, protected by the First Amendment, to criticize it. And as a Christian, I have an obligation to try to make it better. That doesn't mean I love it any less. In fact, it's because I love it, right? That's what we tell our children. It's because I love you, I will discipline you. It's because I love you, I will tell you about the things that I want you to improve. So it's because I love America. I don't spend a bunch of time researching what's going on in Canada, what's going on anywhere else in the world. I spend my time trying to figure out how to make the place where I plant my feet on the soil every day better. So I think it's because of that great love that I do that. I also think, to your point, Chris, it's easy to get this apathy about people who are in a different situation than us. I do it all the time. Like, I drive past people who are on the side of the road who I see there in a repeated state. And what I'm always convicted of is that very morning I prayed to God for something that I know the next day, that same day, I'm going to squander. God, give me peace, but I'm going to fight with my wife about something, right? God bless me, but I'm going to go squander it on some food that I really don't need because I'm gluttonous, right? And I know that I'm living really well, yet I still go to God every day and say, God, could you just give me a little more? Right? I just want a little more. So while it's easy, I find it so easy for me to judge other people's situations, and then I think about the fact that I'm asking God for that, and he keeps giving it to me, which is weird. Right? He keeps allowing me to go back to work, and every 2 weeks they decide for whatever reason to pay me for it. Right? And he keeps allowing me to stay in my marriage even though I try to blow it up every day. Right? So he still continues to bless me despite the fact that I don't deserve it, and I keep coming back to him for the things that I know I'm going to squander. So I just think we have to think about that when we're thinking about people who we run across who are in need.
Well, and so Amos, he goes in and he convicts or confronts them with all of these injustices, and he says, I'm going to point you to the character of God. So what he points to is justice and righteousness, mishpah and tzedakah. Those are the words that he uses, and I'll just quickly run through there. Mishpah is justice, but a lot of times we think of justice as Somebody gets what's coming to them, right? That's what we think of justice. That's not what mishpah is. Mishpah is restorative justice. Yes, there is justice, but we're looking to not only see that person come to justice, but be restored to being right. That is mishpah. Tzedakah, this is probably, I'll just read it to you, is defined as a call to justice, fairness, upright living, but it's more of a demand for a personal relationship with God. More precisely, righteousness in the Old Testament is the fulfillment of the demands of a relationship between God and one's fellow people. So being in the right. If you don't think that God is for righteousness and justice, it won't take you very long to find a few verses to support that he is. Proverbs 3, 8 and 9. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. Yes, speak up for the poor and helpless, and see that they get justice. Jeremiah 22 and 3. This is what the Lord says. Be fair-minded and just. Do what is right. Help those who have been robbed. Rescue them from their oppressors. Quit your evil deeds. Do not mistreat foreigners, orphans, and widows. Stop murdering the innocent. Psalms 146, 7 and 9. He gives justice to the oppressed and food to the hungry. The Lord frees the prisoners. The Lord opens the eyes of the blind. The Lord lifts up those who are weighed down. The Lord loves the godly. The Lord protects the foreigners among us. He cares for the orphans and widows, but he frustrates the plans of the wicked. Psalm 146, 7 through 9. God is for justice. God is for righteousness. And when we're talking about all of these things that they've accused the nation of Israel for, and very rightfully, Amos could come to the United States right now and very rightfully accuse us of the same thing. Pastor Jelani made a statement that I thought was really good. He said, when God does justice, he sends us. That's a profound statement. He sends us. I loved his description of the transformers. You know, the power comes through us and then it gets adjusted and it gets put to the right level. And okay, so God empowers us to go in and transform something. He gives us the ability to see something and go, that's not right. That is not what God stands for. Remember, we are first and foremost citizens of heaven. So that is our first priority. That is not right in the eyes of God. And I have to speak into that. I'm required to speak into that. What time we're rolling pretty. Okay. So let me skip a few things. Let's just get into some action points, right? So think about this. Are you willingly or unknowingly participating in any of these things above? Are you willingly or unwillingly? Just take a minute and think about it. Because, you know, we talked about pornography. If you're participating in pornography, you're hitting it on two fronts. One, you're participating in the sexual immorality. And two, you are in apathy saying it's okay for sex trafficking and for abuse. Do you have an attitude of indifference or apathy to any of these items? If you do, bring that before God. Talk to him about it. I thought this one came to mind. Are you prepared to help? Now, being prepared is a couple different ways. You hit on it already. Like, if God's calling us to help poor people, can you help them if you have nothing to give them? In my truck, this is just me, and this is not in any way, just take it for what it is. I have some gift cards in my truck. And it's simply for that moment when I see somebody and God just says, that person needs some help. Are you ready to help? One of the other things, being ready means being educated. Are you at least looking into some things, doing some reading, getting a little bit of an education, understanding what's happening around you? It's really important that you get knowledge. And then Pastor Jelani indicated this, and I think this is where we can really hit the ground running. Share your knowledge. I'm looking out at a room full of really well-educated, well-rounded men. There's a lot of intelligence sitting, well, there's a few of you. Yeah. No, there's a lot of intelligence sitting in this room right here and online. Can you share it? Tell somebody how to do their finances. Tell somebody how to stay out of trouble. You know, just tell somebody what you know. These are the things that can help out. So, looking at these numbers, I'll just leave you with a question. How can you be a transformer in the circle you're currently in your current circle of influence? How can you be a transformer? So let's start transforming our communities. You guys want to finish up?
So at your tables,
Yep.
Is that the question you want them to wrestle with? Yeah. So at your tables, wrestle with the question of how can you be a transformer in your everyday lives. We will come back at 20 after. Is that the time? Yeah. At 20 after to wrap up of us.
Yeah. I, yeah. He is. Yeah. 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 Yeah, I would love to tell you that that's something they teach you. They don't. But I will tell you that is, if you talk about any sin in the country, it is present in the church. And the main reason is because the church is filled with broken people. And so, yeah, absolutely. We can't go far away from home. We don't have to go far away from home to find these injustices. But that is our requirement, to speak into them. We are required to be transformers. And so in your case right there, if you're aware, I'm just saying, if you're aware of your brother or your sister that is actively pursuing or actively doing some of these injustices, it is, I can find scripture to fully justify what I'm going to say. It is your duty to bring that to them. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question well enough for you, but yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I think we used universal statistics to explain a heart problem. And then we're talking about how we as a church can address a heart problem. And I think that even though we carry the label and the seal of Christians, we still have a lot of those heart problems. And so, yes, the statistics may be different. I think when you look at statistics like divorce, incest, rape, things like that, it's not a lot better in the church. And so I think when we speak to those issues, we're still speaking to issues that are addressing people in the church. But I don't want to take too much of our time. So let's do the tables.
Dive in.
Dive in, and we will come back in 20. and then we can talk, as you know, much more about that.